Come join me on my second channel, Jaguar Gator 8, where we'll talk all things college football. New video drops every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch the latest video. And now, on with our feature presentation. Getting blown out is never fun. No one likes to be a part of a game where they're completely taken out of it, where they have no chance at winning, and where everyone's heading toward the exits with still plenty of time left on the clock. However, sometimes, there are good things that can come from a blowout. Every cloud has a silver lining, and sometimes, teams and players are able to find that silver lining. Maybe getting blown out allows you to play some of the backups, and one or two of them impressed you enough where you like what you saw, and where you thought they deserved a chance to play. Maybe getting blown out allowed you to try something new and experiment a bit more with particular formations, since you had nothing to lose. And it actually worked out, to the point where you're now going to try that out in future games. Whether you're a player or a coach, if you can learn from getting beat down and make the necessary adjustments, then it's not all bad. And I'm sure this guy right here knows exactly what I'm talking about. This is former Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive tackle Gerald McCoy. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the history of the sport, winning tons of accolades along the way, and he has made a ton of great plays over his decade-long career in the NFL, making critical sacks and run stuffs to win games and propel his defense. But if you ask him what the biggest and most important play of his career was, he'd probably say that it was a play that came all the way back in a blowout loss in 2010 against the New Orleans Saints. The play did not receive national attention. Heck, it didn't even receive local attention. No one knew it at the time, and the play was so insignificant that it didn't even warrant a replay on the broadcast. However, little did anyone know at the time just how much this play would change NFL history, and how this play would create one of the best defensive tackles that the sport has ever seen. This is the story behind the play that changed Gerald McCoy's career. Before I talk about the play in question, we need some context to understand just who Gerald McCoy is, how his career was going, and how the game was going up until this point. Entering the 2010 season, the Buccaneers needed some help badly on their defensive line. There were many reasons why the Bucs went 3-13 in 2009, finishing with the third worst record in football, only ahead of the St. Louis Rams and the Detroit Lions. However, one of the big ones was their awful defensive line play, as the team finished dead last in the league in rushing yards allowed and in yards per carry allowed. Tampa Bay allowed 2,531 rushing yards in 2009, which comes out to over 158 yards per game, and they did this on 4.8 yards per carry. Their pass rush was poor, only netting 28 sacks, which was the 7th worst total in the league, and only 2 players on their team had at least 4 sacks, with one of those guys, Jimmy Wilkerson, not even being on the team in 2010. The Bucs needed to fill a lot of holes if they were going to right the ship, but perhaps no hole was more important than their defensive line. If they could get someone who could clog up the middle and cause disruption, then they'd be in a good spot. With that, the Bucs chose this man right here. With the 3rd pick in the 2010 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers decided to spend it on Oklahoma defensive tackle Gerald McCoy, as they made him the 2nd defender off the board behind Indomitian Sue of Nebraska. McCoy was an absolute beast with the Sooners, and was a big reason why the Sooners finished the season only allowing 14.5 points per game, which was the 2nd best total in the Big 12, only behind Nebraska, and the 7th best total in all of college football. McCoy finished his junior season with 15.5 tackles for a loss and 6 sacks, and was named a consensus All-America player. After posting 26.5 tackles for a loss in his final 2 seasons, McCoy became just the 3rd defensive lineman in the storied history of the Oklahoma football program to be chosen inside the top 3 of the NFL Draft, joining Tony Casillas in 1986, who went 2nd to the Atlanta Falcons, and Leroy Selman, who went 1st to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 1976. And considering the fact that both players went on to have incredibly successful NFL careers, with Selman even making it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that's not bad company to be in. Safe to say, expectations were very high for McCoy coming out of college, as he was expected to fix Tampa Bay's poorest defensive line. But through the first month of the season, McCoy was looking poor. He was looking lost, out of place, and hesitant, and did not have the best of starts to his career. Some guys are great right off the bat, and they pick up right where they left off from their college days, and some guys take time to adjust, and McCoy was definitely in the latter category to start things off. Through the first 4 games of the season, McCoy had yet to make a big play. He had no sacks and had just 5 tackles, including back-to-back games without a tackle. Now the coaching staff was defending his play, saying that he was actually playing well, even though the stats weren't there for him yet. As Todd Wash, the defensive line coach for the Buccaneers, said on McCoy, "I know people will say they're not seeing any sacks yet, and I understand that, because that's the big thing with him. But we as coaches are seeing everything we expected out of him, and we're very happy with that." However, it was tough to say he was making the impact that the number 3 overall pick should be making, as not only was McCoy not producing in the stat sheet, but he wasn't helping the team out, as the Bucs ranked 30th in rushing defense, allowing over 143 yards per game. McCoy later admitted to confusion on how he should play his position, and said on his slow start, "It's easy to get discouraged. I played 4 games, and 3 preseason games. I've only got 1 sack on the stat sheet, which came in the preseason. It's easy to get discouraged, but you've got to put the right people around you." And it was tough to look at McCoy and be pleased with him when the first defensive tackle taken 1 pick earlier than Ndamukong Suh was wrecking the NFL immediately, posting 3 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, and 4 tackles for a loss in his first 4 games, and was on his way to a Pro Bowl and a first-team All-Pro season. Now, by no means were people saying at this point that McCoy was a bust. We were 4 games into his career, and unless you have a Demetrius Underwood situation on your hands, calling anyone a bust after 4 games is utterly ridiculous and asinine. However, people were starting to wonder, and rightfully and understandably so, when McCoy was going to look like the player everyone thought he'd be when he was chosen 3rd overall. With that, we head down to Raymond James Stadium for this Week 6 divisional matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. This was a big game, as despite everything I said about McCoy's struggles, the Buccaneers were not struggling. They were sitting pretty with a 3-1 record, having already equaled their win total from the previous year. The Saints entered this game at 3-2, and the NFC was looking incredibly competitive this year, especially the NFC South, as the Falcons were leading at 4-1. We don't talk about Carolina. The winner of this game would keep pace with Atlanta for first place in the division, while the loser would have a bit of an uphill climb with 2/3 of the season to play if they wanted to win the division. And considering the fact that the last time the teams met at Raymond James Stadium in 2009, the Saints humiliated the Bucs by blowing them out 38-7, the Bucs wanted to win this game to defend their home field and prevent anything from last year from happening again. Well, that did not happen, because the second verse was looking like the same as the first. Everything about this game was absolutely, positively ugly. On the first drive of the game, the Saints marched 94 yards down the field with ease, needing just 7 plays to go nearly the length of the field, with Drew Brees capping off the drive with a 41-yard touchdown pass to Lance Moore. Keep in mind that on this drive, not once did the Saints ever face a 3rd down. If you ever wanted to see what a Swiss cheese defense was like, the Buccaneers were doing a pretty good job at showcasing that on the opening drive. On their second drive, the Saints drove 80 yards down the field and scored another touchdown, with Brees throwing his second touchdown pass of the day, this one being a 42-yard strike to Robert Meacham. 2 drives and 2 touchdowns with a 14-0 lead. Perfect start for the Saints, and a nightmare start for the Buccaneers. And the Saints added in more points on their 3rd drive when, despite starting at their own 13-yard line, they were able to get all the way down to Tampa Bay's 10 before Garrett Hartley hit a 27-yard field goal. At halftime, the Saints were up 17-0. Tampa Bay had 1 extra drive than the Saints, and had 122 yards of offense by this point. The Saints, despite that 1 drive disadvantage, had 288 yards. This game had the makings of a bloodbath. And late in the 3rd quarter, the Saints poured it on once more, as Brees threw his 3rd touchdown pass of the day, hitting Heath Evans on 3rd and goal at the 4-yard line to make it a 24-0 game. By this point, fans were heading for the exits, especially after on their opening drive of the 4th quarter, the Bucs, needing to play near-perfect football to even have a chance at clawing their way back into the game, blew it after Connor Barth missed a 47-yard field goal. At this point, with 13 minutes left in the game, the goal for the Saints was simple. Run out the clock, don't get anyone hurt, and just get out of there with what was a dominant win. This was an incredibly disappointing performance for the Buccaneers, to say the least. This was a chance to be a statement game. They were 3-1, but their wins came against the Cleveland Browns, Cincinnati Bengals, and Carolina Panthers, 3 of the worst teams in football who would go on to finish this season with a combined record of 11-37. This was a chance to prove themselves against the defending Super Bowl champion, and to get revenge on the team that embarrassed them on their home field the year before in humiliating fashion. And they did not do that. And it was another disappointing outing for Gerald McCoy, as once again, he was invisible. Through the first 3 quarters of the game, McCoy had done nothing. He had 2 tackles, both of which came well past the line of scrimmage. He wasn't providing any pressure in the passing game. Brees had a clean jersey by the end of the day, as he was not sacked once. And he wasn't providing any support in the running game, as the Saints finished the game with 212 rushing yards on over 6.6 yards per carry, meaning that one of the league's worst run defenses entering this game somehow got even worse. You have to wonder when the light bulb was going to go off, because through 4 3/4 worth of games, it hadn't happened yet. But remember what I said about every cloud having a silver lining? Well, if this game was a big black cloud bringing heavy rain into the area, then this next play was the silver lining. Because with 13:28 left in the game, and the Saints up 24-0, on 2nd and 10 at the 37-yard line, Gerald McCoy stuffed Julius Jones for a 1-yard loss. Now you might look at that play and wonder how the heck this play is significant. And at the time, no one knew it. And no one could be blamed for wondering what the play had to do with anything. McCoy made a tackle for a loss when the game was already over. The announcers never talked about the play. The broadcast never showed a replay of said play, cutting straight to a game break from somewhere else afterwards. And the play meant nothing in terms of the final score or the outcome of the game, as the Saints won 31-6. So how did this play change NFL history, and change the career of Gerald McCoy? Because as McCoy would later say, this was the moment that the light bulb finally turned on. This was the moment that everything turned around for the better, because this one play was the moment that McCoy learned what it meant to be an impact defensive tackle in the National Football League. The score was 24-0. The game was over, and McCoy knew this, so he figured that he had absolutely nothing to lose. He was going to play a little bit reckless and a little bit on edge. Worst case scenario was that the Saints get a big play and McCoy does nothing. Okay, considering the fact that the Saints were already getting big plays and McCoy wasn't doing anything, that seems like a good risk to take. As McCoy said on that play, that was the play where I just said, whatever, it's the end of the game. If I make a mistake, well, we're getting blasted anyway, so just do something. And as he came off the ball once it was snapped, McCoy had a message to himself. Be reckless. He said, I was just like, shoot, get out of the way, I'm coming. And those are the kinds of plays that coach wants from me. He pointed that out on film to me and said, this is what I want you to do all the time. So why didn't McCoy play like this before? Well, he was too scared of making the big mistake. He didn't want to do anything that would take him out of position and take him out of the play that would destroy the defense. He said, the thing about playing under tackle in the Tampa 2 defense is, you can't be wrong. Everybody else has to read off you. And I was thinking I can't get out of my gap, and that you can't just go out there and be reckless. But that 1-yard stuff that McCoy made on Jones, that was the moment he realized his entire philosophy to playing defensive tackle needed to change. As he said, you have to be reckless. You can play with structure, but you have to say, whatever, I don't care, I'm going. I was playing like I'm afraid to make a mistake, instead of, oh, I made a mistake, but I was going 1,000 miles an hour. That's the difference between what I was doing and what I will do, and I'm excited about it. I mean, I can relax now. There's no more thinking. I can breathe now. So the bad news was that the Bucs lost this game badly. They lost in rather embarrassing fashion. But the good news was that now, according to McCoy, he was a different player. That one play where he played recklessly because he had nothing to lose, and it turned out to be one of the first positive plays of his career, changed his mindset. And sure enough, the rest is history. Because from that moment on, Gerald McCoy would become one of the greatest defensive tackles in the history of the sport. Despite the slow start to his career, he more than lived up to his number 3 overall pick, and then some. And it'll be close, but there is a chance that he could be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame someday. He made it to 6 straight Pro Bowls from 2012 to 2017, was named a first-team All-Pro in 2013, was named a second-team All-Pro in 2015 and 2017, and at the time of this video, which could change as he is still active, even though he is a free agent, he has 59.5 career sacks and 86 tackles for a loss. McCoy ranks 4th in Bucs history all-time in sacks, and ranks 3rd in Bucs history all-time in tackles for a loss. Quite the career, to say the least. But who knows if we ever get that version of Gerald McCoy without that one play against the Saints. If that game was close, then McCoy never tries to be reckless, because he feels like he might have something to lose. Maybe McCoy plays with restraint, and he's never able to unlock that potential that we saw later in his career. Who knew that a 1-yard loss in the fourth quarter of a blowout game in the middle of October could be that significant? But if getting blown out in that game meant that McCoy could live up to his draft status and become one of the greatest defenders in franchise history, then it was worth it. Because even though the Bucs lost the battle on that day, because of what it allowed McCoy to do, they won the war. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.